welcome to the IoT podcast show. I'm your host, Tom White. Today we are joined by not one but two people from Vodafone IoT. Firstly, we have Christine Chen. Christine Chen is the Principal IoT Engineering Manager, and Sudhir Sarangapany, who is the Head of Engineering for Digital Services IoT Practice. Thank you so much for coming on the show today, guys. Really looking forward to the chat.
Thank you, Tom. Well, it's a pleasure to be here.
Thanks for having us.
You're welcome. So for everyone that's listening that has heard a bit about obviously Vodafone's interest in IoT from various angles, can we just scale back a little bit and talk about how individually you both got into IoT and engineering?
Sure. I mean, I'll maybe kick off. So Christine and I are part of Vodafone Engineering, and we work in our IoT practice, which is part of a wider organization that looks at building and running platforms for businesses. I've been associated with IoT not too long, I must say, just about 3 years or so. But I've been with Vodafone for over, it's coming up to 11 years actually. How did I end up in IoT? It's one of the coolest parts of Vodafone, I must admit, now that I'm here. And we typically encourage internal movements and so on and so forth. So prior to this, I was working predominantly on our IT platforms, looking at product development, supporting product development and business transformation and so on. I saw an opportunity to move into IoT. One thing led to another, and it's been 3 years or so.
Okay, fantastic. And 11 years in total with the company.
11 years in total.
Well, that says something good, right?
Oh, it definitely does. Well, there's a lot going on, and the thing I really like is the fact that you can move around and do lots of different things. So I'm really pleased to be in the IT part of Vodafone Business over the last 3 or so years.
Excellent. And how about yourself, Christine?
So for me, my background's in a degree is in bachelor's, master's electrical engineering. I started as an RF engineer in the telco industry, so upgrading Vodafone sites from 2G to 3G and 3G to 4G in Australia. Spent a few years in defence as the engineering lead before going complete opposite, went from multinationals to startup, and that was startups in different industries before finally finding my passion in a startup called Thinkstra, who is the Sigfox operator in Australia, New Zealand, and Hong Kong, and really enjoyed my experience there working in IoT. Loved how that interface between technology and use cases, how people actually use it and the impact on its day-to-day life. So then after that, I went into consulting for a year on the fringes of IoT and realized actually I prefer to be more hands-on working with the technology in IoT. So I joined Vodafone last year. Compared to Sudhir, I'm a baby in Vodafone, joined last August, but really excited about the projects we have in digital services. The team has probably my team is over doubled in the last year. Sudhir's like tripled in the last year. So it's been good. It's been an exciting challenge.
Yeah.
And fun.
No, absolutely. Thank you for that. And we were just joking, obviously, backstage as it were, that you joined and have never yet been on site, right? So you're growing, working in this fast-paced industry at a company, but doing it all remotely as well, Christine.
Yes. Oh, it's been fun. I talk to my colleagues every day, probably too much every day. So it almost feels like we're not that far away from each other. But it definitely would be nice to catch up for a drink when things start to open up in September.
Yeah,
hopefully.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you very much for that intro. It's really fascinating to know which paths you guys have both come from into Vodafone. Just to talk a little bit more about what you're actually doing, can you give us some insights into Vodafone's strategy for IoT in relation to businesses and what it is that you guys are working on a continual basis?
Sure. I mean, increasingly in Vodafone, we're very purpose-led. So our purpose is to connect for a better future and create digital societies, but in a way that is inclusive to all, in a way that is sustainable, in a way that is good for the planet. So a lot of what we're doing in IoT and other areas as well is increasingly more and more linked to our purpose. If you look at what we're doing from a business point of view, Vodafone Business, our strategy essentially covers three broad areas. The first one is to extend our leadership in IoT managed connectivity. The second one is to become a leading provider of IoT end-to-end solutions. And the third one is to become a leading provider of mobile private networks, which is an area that's receiving increasing focus and investment right now. I'll very briefly touch on each one of these. So starting off with connectivity, I'd like to say it's IoT cellular managed connectivity, something we pioneered, and we feel we do it better than anybody else. We have over 123 million connections on our platform today, and we're growing at roughly about 20% per year. The managed connectivity platform we have is class leading. We've been a leader in the Magic Quadrant, for the Gartner Magic Quadrant, for 7 consecutive years, operate in five continents, 180 countries, and we're continuing to do more and more when it comes to connectivity. We're looking at ways we can grow our business. That's through technology differentiation, innovation, partnerships, and so on and so forth. So connectivity is the first piece. We're continuing to do quite a bit on that. Linked to connectivity is mobile private networks. Private networks are, when you think about it, they're local networks built to cover a specific location more often than not. And through private networks, you can deliver better service, better level of control, more security, and so on. When you then combine private networks with edge computing, it starts to pave the way for a number of low latency applications across different industry verticals. So we're making some good progress in private networks, and that's a big area of focus for us. And thirdly, which is a lot closer to Christine, to the part of the business that Christine and I work in, is IoT end-to-end solutions. So our plan is to build up a fairly large catalog of IoT end-to-end solutions that serve the needs of various businesses, different shapes, different sizes, different industry verticals. We're putting in place the right capabilities that will enable us to build up this catalog at pace and at scale, leveraging the footprint that we have across the world. IoT end-to-end solutions is a super exciting area for us. Christine mentioned how our teams have grown, but we'll talk about that in a bit more. So those are the 3 key areas of our strategy. Continue to lead on connectivity, start to become a leading provider of mobile private networks, and also start to build up a really good differentiated set of IoT end-to-end solutions.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much for that, Sudhir. Yeah, it's it's a very exciting time. Clearly, we've had a number of people on the podcast talking about various initiatives that they're doing with IoT, and I think one of the main things that is almost scary is that there are almost limitless use cases, isn't there, for what we can do. We've had a number of people on from device-led and smart technology all the way through to medical technology and various other facets that touch upon people's lives. And for me, that's one of the great drivers for IoT, is that it's really the enablement of having a better life and for people to be able to enrich themselves through the technology around them. On that note, I'd be curious to know, what are the prominent end-to-end solutions that you guys are working on right now? And also maybe if we could touch upon what you think may be more prominent in a couple of years to come, and what we'll be seeing out there in the open market.
Sure. What many might not realize is we actually have companies or subsidiaries within Vodafone that specialize in building and developing IoT solutions. So we've actually got 5 centers of competence that are companies we've acquired over the years. Vodafone Automotive is one of them. They're based in Italy, and they have the capability to design and manufacture devices as well. And they serve a lot of automotive and insurance businesses. We've got another center of competence called IoT.Next, based out of South Africa. They specialize in facilities and energy management. Another one from South Africa is Mezzanine, and they look at agriculture. We've then got Grandcentrix in Germany, who have quite a bit of specialism when it comes to low-powered networks and devices, narrowband IoT chipsets and things like that. And they've had quite a lot of success with a number of industrial consumer goods manufacturing companies or businesses. And finally, we've got another subsidiary called Vodafone Innovis, based out of Greece. They're starting to focus on things like remote patient monitoring in the health space. So got these 5 centers of competence, and more or less correlated to those centers of competence are the different verticals that we're going after. So on automotive, we've got, I would say, fairly mature solutions on fleet management and stolen vehicle recovery. On health, we're currently building 2 things. One is a remote patient monitoring solution, working with our colleagues in Vodafone in Greece. And another one we're really excited about is a connected living solution that we're building for the care sector. So health is an area we're starting to focus on quite a bit. Logistics, I would say, is something we've had quite a lot of experience in. Logistics solution, they span different customer segments. So we've recently launched a solution called Tag and Track and Temperature Tag, so 2 solutions actually in Spain, and we're in the process of launching them in Vodafone Italy. These are targeted at more of the small and medium businesses. But then when you look at some of our larger customers who probably have slightly more complex problems to solve, we've got some advanced tracking solutions using things like smart labels and so on. So logistics is an area where there's quite a bit of innovation going in. Buildings is another vertical. We've got a surveillance solution. We've also got a thermal screening or a heat detection solution when hopefully someday we all get back into the offices. And we're very close to launching an office spaces solution as well. And finally, we're working through our roadmap for agriculture and the industrial sector. So a vertical focus across a few different verticals. And for each of these, we've got centers of competence, essentially companies that specialize in building solutions and sometimes even hardware for some of these verticals. I would also say that the end-to-end solutions, we kind of bucket them into 2 ends of the spectrum. We've got plug-and-play solutions that are fairly, they should work just out of the box. They typically work really well for small and medium businesses. And then the other end of the spectrum, we've got custom or tailored solutions. These ones are very specific to the business outcome or the problems each of our customers are trying to solve. More often than not, they involve quite a bit of co-creation with the customers and partners as well. We've got several of those. And again, these ones tend to be a bit more complex, but quite innovative. And these are ones where we bring in private networks, edge computing, video analytics, and IoT together. So it's hard to sort of put a finger on one or the other. There's quite a lot going on, I should say.
Crikey.
And that's the exciting thing about Vodafone really is is that ability to focus on these different areas that are coming up in IoT, the plug and play and the customized solutions.
Thank you very much for that. I mean, that's truly pretty much every angle and every corner of IoT being covered there, right? I think one of the things that's quite interesting that you should mention is agritech. So we've had vertical farming specialists on the podcast in the past, and what kind of dawned to me is the progression of vertical farming and agritech to essentially grow your own, to cut down on the need for freight shipping of perishable items, food, right? So we had Delta Track on in the past that created an IoT solution from a logistics standpoint. You spoke about logistics as well, to track and monitor when food was becoming spoiled, right? So that you would essentially divert that shipment to another country so that it could be sold to someone sooner in the case it couldn't reach its end destination. Because I think the stats are crazy about 40%, 45% of all fruit and vegetables that are shipped across the world ends up not being used. So for me, it's kind of juxtaposed in a way because you've got IoT solutions enabling better logistics and freight and transport, but then you've got other ones that potentially could wipe out that. Do you, and I know this is a bit of a curveball question, but do you see it as sort of Darwin-esque survival of the fittest IoT solution? And because some of these are going to compete against others, right? In the sense of logistics versus agritech and also in automotive, there's different angles. What are your thoughts on that, just quickly?
I mean, what we're finding is there are overlaps when you look at different solutions that, like you say, we're targeting from an agriculture point of view or a facilities management point of view or a logistics point of view. To be honest, a lot of it depends on how you bring some of these different elements together. for instance, we're putting in facilities management solutions to monitor energy levels in buildings and facilities and so on and so forth. When you start to combine that with office occupancy, that's one level of additional value and problems that you can look to solve that you probably didn't even knew was ever possible. When you then add surveillance into it and the art of the possible with video analytics, there's more that comes into it. So it's not something we're worried about, to be honest. I think we're just looking at all of these from different perspectives, and you'd be quite surprised as to how much you can get by bringing some of these things together.
Absolutely.
And maybe that's the potential of plug and play solutions, is that the more plug and play solutions we have available, the less we're focused on certain verticals or certain use cases. But when the plug and play solutions come together, what sort of industry or what sort of vertical they can serve. And I think that's the beauty of plug and play, really.
Yeah, I agree. It's a synergy effect, isn't it? Of everything being.
I was going to say is the thing that is challenging though is how you create these unique application experiences that span across different IoT end-to-end solutions. That's a bit more difficult, because the personas and the types of people who deal with a facilities management solution in one of our business customers is slightly different to probably the person or the department or function even looking at logistics. So bringing the solutions together is not necessarily that difficult in our experience, at least the ones we've had in more recent times. It's building these seamless application experiences that sit across multiple solutions. That's the piece that we're trying to really crack.
Yeah, it's something Sudhir and I are very passionate about. It's just like just tracking solutions alone. There's hundreds of thousands of tracking IoT solutions out there available. Just temperature sensor alone, there's thousands of options out there. But then how you bring these two different use cases together and provide a comprehensive, seamless experience to our customers, and provide the insights that are really the value that IoT provides to them, rather than just tracking things. It's the insight behind these sensor monitoring that provides value to our customers. So providing that kind of service to them, I think I think the future of IoT.
Yeah, no, I completely agree and can see why you say that, Christine, because it's providing a common user interface in a way, right? We look at the principles of single sign-on, and I think that's quite interesting when we talk about IoT, because it's great having all of these devices, but unless they talk together, work in harmony, then either the usage of them won't be as high as it should be, or you won't get the synergetic effect that we spoke about just now by combining them. And what can be done linking all of these together from a plug and play fashion. So yeah, 100%, and it'll be interesting to see where this goes in the future. Just moving on quickly, guys, Vodafone Business Surveillance. So this is something that caught my eye while browsing some of your solutions online. To create a safe and secure environment, be that work, home, in shops, etc. Security is clearly paramount, and something that we've spoken about on a podcast many times in the past. Could you explain a little bit about IoT Security Surveillance and what this means for public safety improvements?
I'll probably take that question. So that's a solution that Vodafone has been working on since 2019. We're working with a vendor, partnered with a vendor on that solution. We've turned around that solution in a very short time frame, within 6 months. And basically it's a combination of it's an example of what we were talking about earlier. Rather than a single sensor, single use case, it's a combination of different sensors, different smart cameras coming together to provide a unified experience, a unified solution to our customers. Our focus, it's already launched. It is available to purchase on the Vodafone website. Our focus on the coming quarters will be on future-proofing that solution, making it as compatible to different devices and sensors as possible out there in the market, standardizing the interfaces so our customers can pick and choose what cameras they want to use, what sensors they want to use, and incorporate that part as part of our solution. And there's also other use cases we're looking at, like body-worn, for example, working more with the airline industry, with manufacturing to provide to address problems like faulty paint on an aircraft, business surveillance is a solution that can scan the paint on an aircraft and see where there's fault and highlight that as an alert to the customer. But yes, so we're really passionate about that solution. It's really that solution has really been a joint effort within Vodafone, the different teams in Vodafone and our vendor, and there's going to be more capability coming.
I think it's very interesting that the business surveillance platform, as you say, and some of the things that you're looking at, certainly that paint and use case that you mentioned is really curious, right? It's fantastic.
Yeah. And you mentioned security on our solutions. That is something that Vodafone is quite known for, coming from a telco sort of background. Security is inherent to what we do. We follow a secure by design process where at the project level we work with group security team to make sure our solutions are compliant to our Vodafone security policies. But also every year our teams go through a cybersecurity board evaluation process where we're faced with over 300 security controls that we have to be compliant with. And these include things like patching, for example, how we segregate our development environments to our test environments and production environments. How do we do engineering? How do we develop a product? How do we do testing? All of these are part of security is in every aspect of the way we build a solution in Vodafone and how we handle customer data. So I think it's one of the inherent advantages of Vodafone in the IoT industry is that ability to address and focus on security.
Absolutely. And I think the secure by design principles that you talk about is something that's very dear to our hearts here at the podcast. Our businesses are both members of the IoT Security Foundation, and know that very well indeed. So it's glad to know that it's not an afterthought from Vodafone's perspective, as often it is in many businesses, right? It's a gold plating exercise. It's something that they look at retrospectively, and you really can't do that with IoT. You know, it's the weakest link often that can cause these issues. You know.
Yeah, and it's increasingly going to be a problem for IoT, right? When it comes to consumer data, it's just a tracker for your pet dog, for example, that might not be as big of a problem. But in Vodafone, and especially the part of the business we're in, we're dealing with, and a lot of our customers are enterprises and corporates. Security is important to them, and the way we do secure by design, I think, delivers value to those, especially those customers.
Absolutely. Is there anything that you wanted to add to that, Sudhir, before we move on in the show?
Oh no, I'm pretty certain Christine will have covered quite a bit. I mean, security and data privacy and security are things we take very seriously in Vodafone. So sometimes it's frustrating, I must be honest, the amount of work we have to do in relation to those three things before we take solutions to market. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's fantastic. Guys, IoT can obviously be a very complex process. One solution can involve multiple components from various vendors. How does Vodafone's End-To-End Solutions simplify IoT from both hardware, software, and connectivity?
I'll get started and maybe Christine can give you some specific examples. So overall, we're establishing the right technology capabilities and processes when it comes to end-to-end solutions. So at a very high level, it's like a three-step process. So first is around how we go about identifying the solutions we should take to market. And that's done through a lot of research, a number of discussions with all of our customers across the footprint and so on. And alongside that identification process is what we call a selection process. So this is where we work out what solutions would fit that need, right? So that's step one. And it's quite a robust way in which we go about doing that identification and selection, but a hell of a lot of focus on customers. Second is a process we call industrialization, and this is a series of things we do around onboarding these solutions from our centers of competence, few that we build ourselves as well as partners. So things that we have to do to onboard them and roll them out across our footprint at scale and at pace. So that's a process that we call industrialization. And thirdly is what we refer to as localization. Now, we've got a presence in lots of different countries. So quite often we have to tailor some of these solutions to serve the needs of our local customers. These could be as simple as language and pricing, but sometimes it also factors in regulatory needs that may vary by region. So identification and selection, industrialization, localization, quite a lot of focus on processes and capabilities, and a lot of technology involved. Different platforms, e-commerce platforms, marketplace platforms, and quite a lot of automation. Do you want to touch on a few examples, Christine?
Yeah, absolutely. So just to add to that, that was something that really surprised me, pleasantly surprised me actually when I joined Vodafone is onboarding a solution in Vodafone isn't like where I've experienced in other companies. You literally just make it part of your catalog and that was it, or and slap your logo onto it and that was it. No, when we onboard a solution, it needs to be part of Vodafone's processes and systems. Our customers want a simplified, unified billing and ordering process for these IoT solutions. And this isn't just for the UK. This means globally across all of Vodafone's companies in Spain, in Greece, in Italy, in different countries. And that is a lot of work. And we do put in a lot of effort to provide that kind of uniformed, simplified experience to our customers. One way of doing that is we've developed what we call a partner playbook, which is similar to Amazon's vendor playbook, a guideline, basically a set of rules and processes that our vendors and partners have to follow in order to be able to interface into rest of Vodafone's processes and systems in order to sell at a global scale. And I think this kind of standardized onboarding vendors and partners kind of way of working is crucial to be able to scale at the global rate we want to grow. We don't want to just be able to sell a solution in the UK or in Italy. Why not sell globally? Why not sell in APAC or wherever Vodafone has a presence and doesn't have a presence? So we're standardizing that interface with Vodafone, make it a much more simpler process for our vendors to onboard to become a Vodafone solution than it used to be in the past. We also putting in a lot of processes in the engineering team, like automation tools, creating a way of industrializing and localizing solutions at a much faster pace than our first few solutions. We're looking at how to managing, because it's a joint effort. It's not just Vodafone that's developing these solutions. A lot of these solutions are joint efforts with our vendors, or a lot of them are come directly from our vendors and partners. So it's we're working with our partners to improve their release, improve and fasten their release life cycles. So we're developing, helping them develop their solutions in a more agile way to make sure they're improving. We're launching solutions quickly, but at the same time improving them over time in a faster manner than I think what the IoT industry has been used to seeing. So an example would be recently we've been working with one of our vendors to improve their release life cycle by 50%. And by doing that, we're catching bugs a lot faster. We're able to release a lot faster and add features to a solution a lot faster than what we previously were used to. And I want to do that. I want to see that across all of our vendors. Yeah, and I think another thing to add is in my team. So we're not just a team of software engineers. We're a truly cross-functional engineering team. Sudhir has really made sure that happens, and I appreciate that because I think it's something. Cross-functional engineering is something that is new to that. I think the typical kind of IT mindset that a lot of people going into IT are used to thinking. So in my team, we have software engineers, we have test engineers, test leads, DevOps engineer. We're also looking at bringing on board, bringing the hardware expertise in-house as well, and we have infrastructure expertise. So it's truly a cross-functional engineering effort, working using Vodafone's capability to support our vendors and partners to launch solutions in a very, very fast manner to get to that very large IoT marketplace in the world.
Well, I think you're doing an absolutely fantastic job. By the sounds of it, what we see online, the various use cases that you're touching. I love the idea of the playbook. I really love how simple that is for businesses to be able to follow a step-by-step guideline about how that they can integrate with what you're doing. And one would imagine we're talking about simplification, security by design, and good general practices around IoT product and feature development, which is amazing to see. And I'm glad that that's at the start of the process rather than somehow bodged in at the end. So that's great. And if we just take your Vodafone caps off for a moment and we talk about the future of IoT, what excites you the most? I mean, clearly you're both very passionate people in this industry. Where do you see this going, and what is it that you really are interested in seeing in the future? Maybe starting with yourself, Sudhir.
I think you mentioned it at the beginning, Tom. The possibilities are endless, really. Some of these things we're actually working on, by the way. The possibilities of bringing blockchain and IoT technologies together, for instance, is super exciting. As we move to a world where things transact with things, right, without human intervention. So that whole joining up of blockchain and IoT is something we're quite excited about in the team. Precise positioning is another area. There's so many different technologies you can use when it comes to either indoor or outdoor precise positioning, right? So Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, ultra-wideband technology, and so on. So again, there's just so many things you could be looking at when it comes to precise positioning. V2X, I mean, the jury's out in terms of when vehicle to everything type capabilities will be there, but that's an area where we're quite excited to see where it goes. Fundamental to all of this is what you can do with data analytics and insights, different forms of data, including video analytics. Some of the ways in which some of the problems we're solving for customers using video analytics, you'd be quite surprised at the types of problems we were applying to video analytics. The technology's there, to be honest. A lot of it is down to how you apply that and how you bring these different disparate pieces together. It's a very, very exciting time for technology, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. And just quickly, Sudhir, you mentioned blockchain. If you're interested in how blockchain, machine learning, and IoT can be involved, there's an episode that we filmed with Yang Yongboom from Edge Impulse. He's a former principal engineer at ARM. He's got a business doing a lot of work with embedded machine learning for IoT. It might be worth having a look at as well.
Yeah.
Christine, how about yourself? Where's the future and where's your heart at within IoT?
A lot of places. I'm really passionate about the office spaces solution we'll be launching soon. Vodafone is actually going to be using that ourselves to manage our office spaces post-COVID.
Oh, wow.
So I'm really excited about use cases like that. Connected vehicles is another one. I'm horrible at parking. Engineers in my team say they better not run across me when I'm driving if I ever drive into Newbury, which I'm not going to.
I was just going to say that's the real reason you haven't gone to the office, right?
Pretty much. Connected vehicles, AIoT is another exciting one, but really I think I'd just like to get to a point where the conversation in the industry isn't about which is going to be the next prominent use case, but rather IoT is just everywhere in our life. So it's not about use case, but it's just part of our life, day-to-day life. And maybe just get to a point where my mom would actually know the difference between IoT and IT. That would really help as well. So I think that's probably really what I'm trying to get to in IoT.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic, and that's such a nice, sweet, poignant thing to end it on, because one of the things that we try to do with this podcast is to actually explain the significance of IoT at a high level to people who are perhaps outside of the industry. Because I think we can all be victim to getting wrapped up in our own solutions and what we're doing. It's just the average person on the street. What does this mean to them? And hopefully anyone that didn't know IoT or already understood it took some really valuable insights from the time that you guys have kindly given up today to talk about it. So without further ado, Christine, Sudhir, thank you so much for coming on to the IoT podcast show today. It's been fantastic, really, really insightful to hear about Vodafone and everything that's going on. I assume people can find out more about Vodafone online. Perhaps just go to the Vodafone website. Any other locations that they can have a look at?
Just start at Vodafone.com, and that'll take you wherever it needs to take you.
Okay, excellent, fantastic. Thank you very much for coming on to the show. And if you'd like to find out more about Vodafone and initiatives in IoT, check out the website. Look at the comments in the link below this episode. Please get involved in the conversation, and we hope to see you on the next episode soon.